A pencil or a pen, and on your prayer list, I want you to write some numbers down. And when I give you those numbers, I don't want you to show them to anybody else. It's not your weight, but it is your birthday. And I just want the year, is all. The year of your birth. When you get home, I want you to go to the census, life expectancy on U.S. Census, and look at what your life expectancy is if you were born in that year. Now, if you, the U.S. Census told me that the average person that was born in 1949 will live 27,375 days. That sounds like an awful lot, doesn't it? That's 75 years times 365. If I'm average, just average, I have approximately 7 years, 6 years. I can't even add. So I have 6 years times that 365 days in that year. That's not very many. But I want you to know I'm not average. I just want you to know that. So I plan to have a 103rd birthday party. And Patty thinks she's going to be too old to host it, so I may have to get some of y'all to host it for us. But we're going to have a good time. So look at your years, see how many years are left, and then think about this with me. If you had to choose 2 or 3 things that were really important for you to accomplish, what would they be? What would those 2 or 3 things be? If you really wanted to accomplish something for the Lord, I think it's very important. Life is precious, life is short, and it's really, we shouldn't be wasting it on doing things that are not what we would call very, very important. I did look up on another website what the most dangerous item in a house is. And why somebody would do research on that, I have no idea, but they did. In the United States, we have 460,000 people injured by kitchen knives in a year. That's a lot of people, isn't it? Now, several things amaze me. 100,000 by power tools, 20 deaths each year by drapery cords. Now, that's a strange one. 4,000 people are injured by pillows. I don't know how you do that, but anyway, that's from the internet, so you know it has to be true. Yeah. Can I tell you what I think the most dangerous item in a house is? I think it's our easy chairs. I heard that laugh. Can I tell you why I think it's the easy chair? Once I get in my easy chair, it's hard to move me out. You know, it really is. Patty will tell you that I have been known to go to sleep with a cup of coffee in my hand in my easy chair. And there's so many other things that I could be doing besides that. Jesus said, I want to come to give you life and life more abundantly. And when he told us that that's what he wanted to give us, life and life more abundantly, then we need to recognize and realize that that life that he's given us replaces what our enemy, Satan, wants to give us, who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. The thief does not want us to live our life to the maximum. He wants to steal from us. And am I living my life that way? One of the questions I have for myself is, am I willing to do whatever it takes to spread the word of Christ through our world? And that includes getting out of the easy chair and doing something. Many of y'all may know Dan Fulton. Dan is with the Gideons, and I heard him several years ago speak, and he does an excellent job speaking. He told the story of being in New York City. he was there, and as he was there, a man would refuse to take a tract from him. And Dan said, well, can I buy you a hamburger since you won't take the tract? And they went in, and Dan bought him a meal. And then when he was leaving, he said, can I have that piece of paper now? And Dan said 1 year later, when he went back, that man was sitting on the third row from the front in church. And I thought, wow, what a testimony. But it really comes down to what our priorities are. What is really the most important thing to us? Is it sharing the gospel or something else? Lauderdale County will lose about 5,000 people, according to census estimates, from 2010 to 2020. But there's still over 30,000 who do not have any connection with the church. You know, no connection at all. 30,000 people. What would happen if we went out and recruited 1/10 of those 30,000, or even 1/100th? If my math is right, 1/100th of 30,000 would be 300 mathematicians. Is that pretty close? If you have your phone with the calculator on it, figure it up for me and let me know. But what do we do? How do we handle that? Let me read from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, beginning in verse 9, reading through the end beginning in verse 22. Paul says that I became all things to all men so that I may by all means save some. That means he was willing to do whatever it took to do that. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we are imperishable. Therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air. I read today a great thought, or I thought it was a great thought. The thought was simply this: if you're going to run a race, it doesn't matter how fast you're going if you're going the wrong way. Isn't that true? So we have to be going the right way. I had this happen to a friend of mine once before, and he had his message on cards, and when he picked them up, he didn't pick them up in the right order, so it was very confusing. If you don't understand where I'm going, remember the floor. But this is what we really need to be about doing. It is working that way. Now, 3 questions. Question number 1, how do you get out of the chair? How do you get out of what the chair does? We get out of the chair, and the chair is that figurative symbol that we're using for doing what we should be doing. How do we get out of not doing it? We believe. We have a dynamic faith that enables us to defeat all discouragement and and to live victoriously. We behave correctly. Our beliefs will either change our behavior, or our behavior will cause us not to have beliefs. We need to be aware of certain dangers. We live in a really tough world now, and we belong to the kingdom of God, belonging to Christ. So how do we get out of the chairs? We actually believe we can do it. Our behavior shows that we have done it. We're aware of the temptations to go back, and we belong to what Christ wants us to do. Now, if we know how to get out, and by the way, I know how to exercise. I used to be good at it at one time, but there have been seasons of my life where I didn't exercise. Had nothing to do with knowledge, had to do with desire. So why should we get out of the chair? To live more like Jesus. That's what our desire should be, is to be more like who he is and what he does. And if we're going to do that, we need to be dissatisfied with what we're doing now. Paul wrote also in Philippians about what we really need to do. And in Philippians chapter 3, verse 13 says, "Brethren, I do not regard myself to having laid hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind me and reaching toward what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." So what do? We have a dissatisfaction with what we're doing now. We're not satisfied with what we're doing and how we're doing it. One of my favorite things to do in a vehicle is to hit cruise control. I may be going 35, 40 miles an hour, and I'll hit cruise control. I don't know if it's good for the car or not, but anyway, I like the idea of not having to control the pedal. I don't use it when it's raining. I don't use it when the traffic is heavy, but I sure do want to. We need to have a dissatisfaction with our lives being on cruise control and reach out to control it. I drive my Jeep, which has no modern features on it at all. No cruise control, basically no power windows, no power locks. None of those conveniences that I've grown accustomed to. But I like the Jeep because it causes me to think about what I'm doing. Paul said also, "This one thing I do, not having regarded myself to having laid a hold of it, but I'll do one thing." What is the one thing he does? He does what he's called to do as a Christian. Amateur does things from time to time. A professional devotes full time to what he's doing. We need to be professional in what we do. Third thing, we need direction. He forgets those things which are behind. Do we know that this coming year or the rest of this year that we're going to be able to learn from the past, but we have to move on. And we're going to find some determination that helps us press toward the mark. We need to have that dedication that changes our lives. Third question, what should our priorities include? The chair or people? In the passage that we have just read from Corinthians, it says to us that we don't want to be stumbling blocks. We want to reach all people in all things. And he said that if we want to do that, if we want to reach people, all things in verse 22 of chapter 9 of Corinthians, that we might win the weak, we have become all things to all men, so by all means we will save some. All things, I have become all things. This is sometimes a phrase that's used by the world that Paul never intended. It is not a license to sin. Our model is Christ, and he didn't compromise what he did in his life. We can never change the message because Romans 12:2 tells us not to be conformed, but to be transformed. Will Rogers said, and I like a lot of his quotes, "In order to succeed, you must know what you are doing, like what you're doing, and believe in what you're doing." That's pretty good advice, isn't it? Like what you're doing, know what you're doing, and believe in what you're doing. When he talks about all men, we need to take this very seriously. There's nobody of the wrong wealth status, education status, any other status that we need to ignore. Why do we go to all men? Well, several reasons. People need to hear it. People will respond if we love them. And Jesus told us at least 5 times to accomplish this. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts, he gave us a commission to go out and reach all of the world. And you have to realize that real evangelism is more than the staff and the deacons, more than places like the church, more procedures. It is involving us getting out to the people, and more power than human performance. That's what we need to do. All means that I may save some, that I might at any price rescue, that I might at all costs gain some, that in one way or another I will save some, that by a possible means I might win some to the Lord. It's not about us. It's about Christ Jesus and what he wants to do within our lives. The message we have is simple. I like the acrostic go, go, because the first go is God has a purpose, abundant life for all. The first O is we have a problem. Our problem is sin. It's in our lives. God's plan, Jesus died for us. Our response is to say yes or to say no, but we have to respond. Who will we reach? Well, we can reach a lot of different people. I love the fact we go on mission trips. I love that we do that. But I also love the fact that we see local needs and we accomplish those local needs. I was asked the other day about Love Out Loud. I think it's a great program, but it lasts basically 1 week. Let me tell you what our Love Out Loud is. We have meals that we take once a month, and y'all help me with the numbers, 70 plus meals that we take. Okay, it's up to about 85 then? See, that's Love Out Loud, isn't it? 12 times a year we do that. That is tremendous, folks. That is one of the reasons that I think God has blessed us in so many ways. We deliver cookies 3 times a month or a couple of times. Okay. But we'll start back. Okay. We do grass cutting. Guys, how many yards do y'all cut now? 9? Okay. That's a lot of grass to cut, isn't it? And they like to get out there bright and early and get it over with. And I think it's a good idea for them to do that. VBS. To think about our church averaging 94 kids in VBS, that is tremendous. Most of those of you who worked in it are still exhausted from it. And that's understandable. That's about almost twice as many as we have done in the past. Our shoe boxes. Tonight you were challenged to raise 200, is that what I remembered? 200 shoe boxes. That's a worthy goal. That's a great goal. A lot of people do not come even close to that. So I think that's, what else do we do to share the message? You know, every time we allow the schools or the Lauderdale Association or anybody to use our facilities, they have the opportunity to see the true love of God and the difference that it makes in our church. We also this fall are considering looking at starting a Wednesday evening meal. That would be, very good, especially for young adults. But if we do that, let me tell you what we've got to do. We've got to step up to the plate. We need 5+ cooking teams that will be responsible for one Wednesday night a month or every 5 weeks or whatever we said. That's going to take a lot of commitment on our part. I think it will benefit mostly the young adults with kids and getting off from work, But there's some of us senior adults that will enjoy eating the meals as well. And we want to do this to help our church, but we need help. We have one team volunteered so far, right, Kay? And so we need at least 4 more, maybe 5, 6, 7 teams. The more teams we can enlist, the less time we'll have to serve the meals. So y'all give some thought to that. If you really want to meet local needs, we can do that in what we do. What else could we do? What are some other things that, looking around, that we could do or we would need to do that would help us reach people within this community? We're looking at this fall restarting our visitation program and working on it, getting the whole church involved in it, not just a small group. What else could we do? Any suggestions?
I think our church is one of the biggest leaders in support of children's ministry.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. And we need to keep that up, don't we? All right, what else could we do? Homework assignment. I would like for you to think about. Now, I've been giving you a lot of homework lately. I actually got some of it turned in and have graded it already. And so far, everybody's made 100 on it. The faith acrostic that we're working on, I've already gotten some of those. But I'd like for you to think of something that you would like to see us consider, talk about, think about, and promise you won't be mad if we can't do it or don't do it, but promise me you'll be glad if we can work it in and do ministry to people here. The Love Out Loud principle that we're already doing year-round here, 52 weeks a year, and making a difference in our community. What a difference something like that would make. I really do have a dream that we would eat our problems for breakfast. Are you familiar with that book? It's a great little book. It's not a religious book, not a Christian book, but it's a great little book. But I have taken it and found a chapter in Psalms that really helps us to eat problems for breakfast. Psalm 37 talks about how we can develop an attitude that actually can change things. The first thing it says is that we don't worry. Verse 1 says, "Do not fret because of evildoers. Do not be envious toward wrongdoers." Isn't that a great thought to think about? Don't fret because of evildoers in the world. We have already won the battle. Verse 3 says, "Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness." What a great thing. Trust God in what we're doing. You know, we say we trust God, but many times we really don't. Number 3 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of the heart." When I think about delighting myself in the Lord, it is my opportunity to be close to Him and to work closely with Him. Verse 5 says, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do it." Commit your ways. Jesus told us 2 things about what it meant to be a disciple. 1, we obey His commandments, and 2, we love as He loves. And that's critical for us to know. And then the last thing it says in verse 7, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his ways, because of the man who carries out wicked schemes." Wait on the Lord. That's hard for some of us to do. It really is. But we're to wait until the Lord gives us that kind of movement. I looked up on the website of the Census Bureau, and we had 80,261 people living in Lauderdale County in 2010. The population is estimated at 75,000 317 for 2020 when we have the next census that is there. The age groups that are there are tremendous. We have 51.5% female. We have people 65 and over, 17.4%. People 18 years and under, we have 23%. So the population is there for us to reach out to people. Housing units, there are 35,349 housing units in our community, owner or rental, both. And education, we have 86% of our county that has graduated from high school. Health, the disability under 65 is 14.3. Without health insurance is 12.6. There are a lot of positive things right there that tell us how we can reach people and what we can do to reach them. I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't let the easy chair keep us from doing what God has to say. A friend of ours, Billy Hudgens, used to say, the hardest door to go through to reach people for Christ is yours. And I thought that was a great saying. And I've tried to live by it through the years. Any questions, any thoughts? Yes, ma'am.